Hi readers, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. Today we're going to talk about the books that I read in the month of October. I had a really good reading month in October, but I think it was due in part to a couple of things. One, that I love horror, and I had a really good list of possibilities to read this month. I also listened to or read the creature features titles that were released by Audible and Amazon for the month of October, written by some horror authors as well. And they were novellas or short stories, but I guess some of them were novellas. I don't know that it matters. What I'm happy to say, though, is that I read or listened to most of them, but not all of them. I think there were six or seven altogether. I started one toward the end of the month and it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't click for me at that time. But anyway, let's talk about the books that I did get finished in the month of October, and then one that I DNF'd that was a buddy read, and I feel kind of bad about that. Let's talk about the one that I DNF'd, and that is Accidental Magic by Iris Beaglehole. I had agreed to do a buddy read along with a couple of friends on a Patreon that I'm a member of. We had kind of discussed it on Discord and decided that we would go ahead and do the buddy read. Nobody else wanted to join us for it, which was maybe an omen. Anyway, we all three tried to read this book, and all three of us DNF'd it. I feel kind of bad about that because I really had high hopes about this. It was supposed to be kind of a Gilmore Girls meets, witchiness in a small town where people are doing weird things. And this woman inherits a house from her grandmother, whom she had kind of not seen for a long time. And her grandmother apparently had some experiences in her life that this girl was not aware of. It just didn't work. It was just the writing was very sophomoric, and it was just not drawing me in. I think all of us had the same problem. We didn't feel connected to the story or to the characters. And honestly, it just wasn't for me. I am not going to say that you wouldn't love it and enjoy it. But again, I think at least for now, it's not something that I'm going to spend time reading. It has a 3.94 rating, though, on Goodreads. It is the first of this series, which the series is the Myrtlewood Mysteries, but it has some mixed reviews, definitely. The first book I finished, I actually had started, I think, at the end of September and didn't finish this until the very first part of October, and that is Ruth Ware's new title, 0 Days. I also participated in a book chat with Ruth Ware on a virtual platform where we were able to send in questions through our libraries, but not to actually chat with her. But that was also very interesting. And so I learned a lot about her process writing 0 Days and her process just in general. I do adore Ruth Ware's work, and I think it's solid. I look forward to it. She has been compared to Agatha Christie, and there are moments where I feel that, but she also kind of focuses on either a different trope or a different sort of scenario or setting. And in this case, it's a tech scenario. This couple, Jack and her husband, what's his name? Gabe. I should remember that. My friend's son is Gabe. Jack and Gabe are what they call pin testers. And so Jack goes in to investigate if she can get into different companies and if she can get into the physical space. So she tries to kind of break in and then break through their storm walls or their locks and all of their electronics and all of their face recognition software and all that stuff. So she physically goes into buildings while Gabe tests their electronic, cloud stuff and all of their tech stuff to see if it's safe and solid. And so that's their job, is to try to break into or break through people's walls, their tech walls and their physical walls. the book begins with Jack in this particular setting, and she is communicating with Gabe throughout this, kind of meandering through this place to see if she can get through this and that, and everything is going fine. And so she ends up finishing that night a little differently than she anticipated, but not surprisingly. And then she goes home to find that Gabe has been murdered, and she is the prime suspect for his murder based on some things that the police discover. So she then goes on the run to try to find out who actually did kill Gabe and to try to clear her name. Let me just say that the descriptions of this experience that Jack is having were incredibly rich and real. I will there's some gore in this, I guess, in the sense of, some injuries that she experiences, and the way that this author really described that was incredible, but also the level of knowledge that she had to kind of gain to be able to understand this, process and this tech work and how this might work or not work was incredible. I think it must have been very well researched. And she does talk about some of that and who helped her along the way and what made her think of doing this particular book, what made her think about this as a plot. I think it's a great plot. At one point, I said that this reminded me of a movie, and I can't remember what movie I had equated it with at that time, but it was not that one. But again, I don't think that she ever really said, I modeled this after this particular book or movie. But what she did say was that she learned so much about, and it kind of scared me too when she was talking about this, so much about how easy it is for people to access our data and information online, and how badly we choose passwords, and how there's a lot of stuff out there that we should really consider adding into our lives. And so I need to get on that. But anyway, I enjoyed this a lot. It was a 4-star read for me. Next, I read the short story novella Ankle Snatcher by Grady Hendrix. I didn't love this one as much as I loved some of the others. I gave this one 3 stars. Ankle Snatcher is, it starts out with a man who is dating a woman, and some things occur, and there's some correlation to his family history, and so it was good. It was really good. It just wasn't my favorite, and of all of them I probably would say that one was my least favorite, but it was fun, and it was short, and it was interesting. This one the Riley Sager, the new Riley Sager, the only one left. I was so anticipating this, and I really wanted to finish this one in the month of October. And I will say that I did enjoy it. I did end up giving it 4 stars. It was a 4-star month for me, for sure. Spoiler alert. But I didn't love it for a while. I feel like I was at least about this way through, maybe even farther, before I really started to kind of say, okay. And I'm not sure what it was about this book that didn't quite work for me at first, but I was compelled enough to keep going. And I love the plot of this. It is a sort of a Lizzie Borden retelling of a story that is familiar to all of us, but it is Maine. The Hope family has experienced at their mansion a series of murders, very violent murders, and there's one person left as a result. Lenora is in her 70s and is confined to a wheelchair and needs constant care, and her caregiver left suddenly, and so Kit is hired from the service that she works for to be this woman's caregiver, and she gets to know Lenora and some of the other people that work within this literally crumbling estate on this high peak of a mountain or something over the water. It is a great atmospheric novel for sure. In the sense of atmospheric horror, I would say that this one gets the job done. I did enjoy Kit and her character, it wasn't that I didn't like her, and I liked Lenora, and I wanted to find out more about her. I think it was just a little slower for me at first than I wanted it to be, and then once it was just felt like, the same stuff. It was, we just weren't moving. And again, Riley Sager does sometimes pace his novels differently. Some of them are kind of slow burns. This one was just a little slower than I thought it would be. But again, by the time I got toward the end and things started to pick up, I really enjoyed it. So I would say for a while, I was kind of leaning toward a 3, 3.5. In the end, it was a solid 4, maybe even a 4.5. I was surprised by the ending, which I always like when I'm surprised by the ending. So yeah, I recommend it if you like Riley Sager. My next choice, I got 2 book of the months off my shelf this month. In fact, I even got a prize because of it. Got a little something because I made, I don't know, some book milestone. But The Stranger Upstairs by Lisa Maitland or Matlin, Lisa M. Matlin was the next one that I took on. This is a new author to me. I think, is this her debut? I think it is. Yeah. Yeah. She's a health advocate. She's a dog mom, and she's got a sense of humor, and her foreword is pretty amusing, I would say. I liked this one. This one is about a couple who move into this house, and it's very sort of renowned in the sense of that it's supposed to be haunted and it's kind of run down, and she's going to go through a series of renovations on this house in this very affluent neighborhood where this one kind of clunker house is located, and she's going to vlog this and really put this on social media so that people are kind of following her and watching her progress, and then I guess she intends eventually to sell it. I I will say that there were some things about this that were a little far-fetched to me, even in the sense of I know it's horror, but the relationship issues I think were pretty far-fetched to me. But generally speaking, I did enjoy this book. The main character is a therapist, and she works with some other therapists, and she's really kind of struggling in all of her relationships, really. Her relationships with her husband, with her patients, with her coworkers. I mean, she's just and her neighbors. I mean, just she's kind of she's really quirky, I would say. But I did enjoy this. I don't want to let too much out about it, but there are some things that start to happen that really make this renovation and this experience in this house kind of freaky. It was also atmospheric. It's a unique neighborhood. It's a uniquely developed plot, and it was pretty creepy. I enjoyed it. So again, another 4-star read for me. Okay, one of the creature features is called It Waits in the Woods by Josh Malerman. Josh Malerman, if you're not familiar, wrote Bird Box and some other novels. Inspection is one that I didn't get to, but I'm also Daphne. I started it and I hadn't finished it. But Josh Malerman does horror, I think, in a very unique way. He comes up with very unique plot to me. I think he does. And so It Waits in the Woods was probably my favorite of these novellas that I read, and listened to this one. I will say this about It Waits in the Woods. There is a part pretty far into this where there are sounds that are made in the audiobook that are maybe the creepiest sounds I've ever heard in a storytelling setting of horror. Like, I was sitting there listening to them, and I was driving actually, and I was just so uh and I can't even describe what word I would use to say how I felt in that moment, but I was shocked and curious about how they did that, and just fascinated by it. So this one follows a girl whose daughter, or whose sister, goes missing, and the family and the neighbors and all of the folks try to find her in the woods. They don't know what happened to her, and the sister feels responsible because of some things that happened. And that's all I'm going to tell you, but I will say that it was creepy. And if I were to recommend a way to take this in, the audio would be it. Then I also listened to Big Bad, which is a novella by Chandler Baker. And this one was about a family isolated in the woods as well. And it is also a unique plot. I really appreciated it. It was pretty creepy too. It starts out with this guy showing up at this house, and he says that he's rented the cabin that's near the house as a verbo. And the man who owns the house says, "Nope, you didn't. You're not on the schedule." And he says, "Yes, yes, I am. Here, look." And the guy says, "Nope, nope, you're not." And so he leaves. But does he leave? And what happens after that? Big Bad was quite entertaining as well. Speaking of entertaining, I did finish Chandler Baker's Cutting Teeth. I was really anticipating this, and I was really afraid that it would not live up to my expectations, and it did. It also got 4 stars from me. But here's what was interesting about Cutting Teeth. It was creepy. I have said to you before, this is about a group of preschoolers in a classroom that are craving blood, and they're suddenly starting to act out in ways that the teacher and the parents are mortified by. And that is indeed this sort of center of the plot of this book. But what I will say is this is not a book just about, it's not a horror novel about children who may be vampires or may not be vampires. This really is a book about the pressures and the stresses and the experiences of motherhood and of friendship as mothers, and of how we set standards for mothers these days. I will say those standards were not in place when I was raising my children. And I think that that is, a result of a variety of things, including social media and the way that people are expressing themselves and showing what they do or don't do. And probably they are doing those things. They're trying to do those things to be this sort of group of super moms, super parents, right? Which has become sort of the norm. And I can't imagine what it would be like to raise a child in this day and age, especially also because there's so many other options and so many other possibilities for your kids to be stimulated by sports and by, other academic activities. It's just an incredible study of motherhood, which is what surprised me about this entire process, because I wasn't expecting that. And it's also an incredible study about how children are, sort of the ways that moms now bend over backwards to make sure that their kids are okay, and that they're safe, and that they're protected, and that they're treating them in a way that is correct and is, in the best interest of the child. It was just incredible. And it's funny. It's funny and it's not funny. It has a lot of characters in it, which sometimes were a little hard at first to kind of remember. And I did read this physically. I did not listen to it. I think that did help me a little bit, but I kind of almost felt like I needed to break out a chart at one point so I could remember whose mom had which kid and, was married to which person. But it ended up okay. In the end, I got it, but it was very, very funny. It really, though, also is, I don't know, just something about this to me was way unexpected. So 4 stars, I highly recommend it. And the last one I read was Delicate Condition by Danielle Valentine, whose real name is actually Danielle Vega, and she's written some other, I think, YA novels. This was my first read by Danielle. And actually, Delicate Condition is being optioned into a film. So that is something I'm quite excited about, actually. I also gave Delicate Condition 4 stars. And this one, it's interesting because now I had 2 books to read about motherhood. This one is about an actress who is experiencing some infertility, and she is going through several rounds of IVF, and while she still can at the age that she is, and the likelihood that she can get pregnant. So she and her husband, this starts out in this novel with them going through yet another round of IVF and wanting this round to be successful, obviously. And she's been a child star, so she's kind of evolved her career over time, and she's kind of getting some traction with her career at the same time. So there's a lot of pressure for her in this novel to not only try to get pregnant, but also to manage all of the activities and things centered around her career. She and her husband are staying in kind of a remote place too. Horror and remote locations go hand in hand. And they are kind of adjusting to being in someone else's home. And I think the reason that they are in this other home, I'm trying to remember, is maybe look because of the location of the doctor, but I can't really recall. Nevertheless, they have a driver and they have, this big, luscious, luxurious place to stay, which belongs to a friend of her husband's. And so they go through this round, and then the question is, will this be successful? I don't want to give a whole lot away about this novel. Also, some other kind of sinister things start happening around her, and she's starting to become frightened by these sinister things. And are they fans that are kind of out to get her? And why are these things happening? And she has to take really good care of herself to keep the pregnancy, hopefully going. And again, I don't want to say a whole lot, but it ends up being sort of a, who does she trust? What's really happening? Is this real? Is this something she forgets a lot of things. She stops being able to access some of her calendar appointments where she thought they would be. They're not. And then their appointments show up that she didn't remember making. And it's just like there's a lot going on. What I love about this, and I encourage you to do, is to read the afterword by the author, because she talks about, I think she wrote this while she was pregnant, and she talks about again, sort of the pressures of motherhood, especially for women who are experiencing infertility, and the relationship to medical care and to doctors and to trust and to all of the things that they tell you are dangerous for you when you're pregnant. Don't eat this, don't drink this, don't try this, don't be exposed to this. Again, I'm so grateful. I know I'm old, and and there's challenges with being old too, but I'm so grateful that I didn't go through some of this. Like, obviously, when I was pregnant, you weren't to drink alcohol. And I remember there was kind of a caveat about coffee at first when I was pregnant with my first child, which sadly was when I became sort of obsessed with coffee because I hadn't had coffee before. And I felt a little bit worried about that. Like, okay, he said to watch my caffeine intake, and here I am now addicted suddenly to coffee. It's all I want. But, I remember just you worry about everything, right? And nowadays, these restrictions and these, warnings and worries and all these things are just incredible. And of course, the whole experience of infertility for people, I don't have that personally. I did not have any issues with fertility. In fact, I almost had an over fertile experience in many ways. But honestly, it is a struggle. And I know a lot of people that are struggling through this, and I can see how difficult it is to engage in these kinds of treatments. And so she talks about that, and she talks about being pregnant and all those things. And so that to me was also a big part of what I enjoyed about this book, is that she really kind of spent that time to acknowledge the challenges for women who are experiencing this. But it was creepy. It was compelling. It kept me going. I read it pretty quickly, maybe most quickly of all of them. And I did a combination of listening to this one as well as reading it on Kindle Unlimited, I think, because I don't think I bought it. And yeah, I would recommend that too. 4 stars. So it was really, again, kind of a 4-star month for me. I wish one of them had kind of risen to the 5-star realm, but it just didn't quite. Can't wait to see what you read in the month of October, especially if it was creepy, horror-y things. I'm always looking for more. And again, I had a big stack of potential horror to read this month, and I just couldn't get to all of it. But there's always time for horror. Every month is a month that you can read horror. And thanks for watching. Thanks for your subscribes and your comments and your likes. And as always, happy reading. Bye.